After posting my art manifesto, titled Ennobling Portraiture, I was approached by a young man. He turned out to be the son of the famous Russian philosopher Alexey Dugin. What could someone in his position find in my ideas about art, and what could I learn from him, from the other side of the war? So I invited him to a conversation. He brought his artist friend Alexey Bevza. They are both members of the Moscow avant-garde collective Sovereign Art, and I am joined by my friend and philosopher Willem de Witte.
Hello. Thank you for inviting us. We could speak about your recent post. Maybe before that, you should tell us a couple of words about the Kirak and your role in it, because we're not that familiar with your project.
So we started in 2016 making films that were sort of portraits about the liberal elite, as it was in that time, in order to see if we could figure out something that could grow away from that. And since then we have made 25 films that are both a criticism of the sort of cultural world we live in, and which are also at the same time art pieces or manifestos or attempts to propose a new form of art. This would be my way of summarizing it, but I'm always also more curious to learn how you guys experienced it from the very few engagements you had with my films.
Yeah, I think we should go that way also, but could you just a little bit explain the structure of Kirak, how many people are involved and the roles? I mean,
sounds like an interrogation immediately.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is a horizontal community, or it's just a label for you, just the one guy.
I mean, I'm the director of the films of Kirak, so I'm the boss of the films because I don't think it works any other way. I see Willem as a partner in the Kirak collective, and he writes pieces of which I am not the boss.
So you are on the top of hierarchy.
Yeah, of the films most definitely. And maybe I'm also the energizing force or the initiator of stuff. But I think what I'm trying to do is to build a platform on which I can also find other artists that I find interesting, that inspire me. It's also a desire for a discourse.
I got it. So how do we see your work from our perspective? That's the question. Could be.
Yes.
Yeah. I saw completely just one piece, a honeypot one. I know it's I think it's under the paywall or something like that. Yeah.
I think there's a big sample on YouTube, but yeah.
My fellow sent me, I don't know, it's a pirating or what, but still I watched it and I had a couple of questions. I found it very interesting. I was really, I enjoyed watching it and it was really interesting for me, but there was several questions I had during watching. I wanted to more clearly, to understand more clearly what's your, let's say, affirmative position. You know, yeah, I see you juggling things. You're you're acting as a jester between figures involved in the movie. You compose the situations and in a way of trolling or ironizing things. And of course, I try to understand what's your affirmative position. And maybe it's not that legitimate question to the artist. When I first watched your honeypot episode, I thought, wow, that's interesting, but seems those guys, they had a nihilistic approach. So they overthrow values, they overthrow some people's, expectations of life and political expectations and so on. And you do not propose something, just the overthrowing itself. So that was my first impression. And I asked you, what's your affirmative position? And then you answered with the quoting Nietzsche and Nietzsche. I think I understand the idea, and I
What idea? What idea do you mean?
Idea of the jester, of the joker, yeah.
Yeah.
And when I read your recent post you pinned on XCOM, I found it, describing and answering my questions.
You mean the ennobling portraiture text I published?
Ennobling portraiture, yeah. And besides that, this post allows me to dig more profoundly in your work. I really enjoyed it because it resembles the ideas we share here with my fellow artist Alexey Bevza in a small circle of the artists and art historian here in Moscow.
Good. So please tell me what you found affirmative about the ennobling portraiture text, because that might answer your question, if I then agree with it. And I'm also just really curious how you, from your perspective, read that in a sort of affirmative, activistic, maybe manifest-like way.
The post about the ennobling portraiture is a manifesto itself. So it demands from art something, yeah? It tries to catch its core. What artist has to do, even if it is even this text touches the idea of the joker and the idea of the jester, the idea of the inversion and subversive techniques and subversive ontologies. Still, the demand of the figure, that figure is kind of, is a manifesto. It's affirmative. I see it that way, and I'm okay with that. I don't want to know your political, well, I'm lying. Yeah, that would be great if you answer who you vote for on your, that's nice questions. But still, as an artist, I think it's more than, it is affirmative. It builds even a political ontology for the artist, this text. So I'm fulfilled with that text, and I don't have that, maybe you can say this primitive questions about nihilism, but we see this from our perspective. We really aware of nihilism, but not in the leftist sense. You answered then that you hear that critique as the nihilist, as nihilists, just from the leftist retards. And I try to describe what I mean, because there is, you can say the traditionalistic affirmative and traditionalistic critique of nihilism and so on, and metaphysical critique of nihilism. Yeah, we can name it. So I am the traditionalist. In what sense? We should a little bit describe that, elaborate that. My philosophy, I execute an art sphere, rely on the books of René Guénon, mostly. I mean, not the trad fashion and so on. I mean the traditionalistic philosophy, which sees the world as descending and so on and so on. That's the idea. And of course, in our art practice, we try to reconfigure something we could say primordial. Yeah. But it is a hypothesis, not the we act as an artist, and that's the idea. So from that perspective, I try to be aware of nihilism, which could be described in modern vocabulary and like a black pill. Yeah, the black pill. Still black pills. Black pill guys are okay. We're okay with that. So why not? If also we are okay with that because they are confronting the actual hegemony. They are usually anti-globalists, as we are, and that's we're okay with that.
So what does the figure of Tel Uilenspiegel do in this ontology, this kind of metaphysics that you just sketched? What is your fascination with the jester character, and how does he fit in?
Actually, we did a really big research on that thing. We are working on an exhibition. First, maybe you should, I should say who we are. I'm a more curator and I curate exhibitions, archival exhibition mostly, step aside from contemporary art scene. I think maybe 3-4 years ago, I was really involved in. And still I do some exhibitions for my friends who describe themselves as contemporary artists, but my personal interest lies in the field of archival and museum thing. And Alexey, he in the first sense, and he is a researcher and philosopher of art. So we do work now on an exhibition which should open, I think, in late February of the 2026, and it is dedicated to the figure of the Till Eulenspiegel. It was not our idea. I had in this an exhibition as co-curator. A professor of Moscow University. He's art historian and very famous in our circles in Russia. What's
his name?
He is Sergei Khachaturov. Sergei Khachaturov. He is an art historian, professor in Moscow State University, and he came with this idea. Let's do the exhibition about Till Eulenspiegel. I didn't heard much then about Till Eulenspiegel. I had to dig in, and I said, well, nice, let's do this. And I didn't understand the whole problem with the Till Eulenspiegel, the big problem of Till Eulenspiegel, let's say that. We just found it, and we, localized the cancer that in this figure. I will develop and will elaborate.
Oh, now I really want to hear it. Now it gets exciting. Tell me about the cancerous.
Yeah, if we want to answer the question, who the fuck was, yeah, we should go further in the history of Europe and see this guy in the context of the more broad context of the jester tradition of jesters. And where from these guys came. Our research insists on that the initiation of this figure is the Saturnalia festivals in ancient Rome, which were dedicated to the Saturn, the god of agriculture and the time, and also the god of the golden age for the Romans. And this Saturn god was, these festivals was really happy, nothing dark about it. And it was, gay in a strict sense and so on. But if we see where the Saturn came from, when we go to the Greek, ancient Greek context, we see Kronos, the Titan Kronos.
Yeah.
And the Kronos is more dark figure. He ate his sons, and he castrated his father, and he was sent to the hell, Tartar, by the Zeus, and he is a chthonic figure. And in the Roman context, this chthonic thing didn't have much space. They really tried to address the idea of golden age, where everything is just nobody works and so on, everybody happy and so on. But in these Saturnalia festivals, there evolved kind of a figure, metaphorical figure of inversion. Yeah, these festivals embodied maybe more archaic tradition of inversion and reversal even of the social roles. Probably you know it, when the slaves switched roles with the masters and so on. And the jester became the guy who is in charge with that thing, This is the guy who mastered this idea. He was in charge with festivals and so on. And when the Roman Empire turned to Catholic, the Christianity, these festivals continued to execute. And it was named as, these festivals was named as Feast of Fools and Feast of Donkeys and so on. We know that even the Catholic Church didn't like that much still the lower classes of priests were involved in that festivals. That's interesting. And what's happened next? The next step is 1431. It's the Basel Council, probably. I don't know in English how to name it. It was the council where the Catholic Church was arguing with, this evolving, rising, the wave of
Reformation.
Reformation. Yeah, thank you. And also, among these things, they signed the law that forbidden the festivals of the fool. They stopped these festivals by the law. And that, in our research, led to the thing that, let's say, these festivals was the kind of, I don't know how to say it in English.
Release valve.
Huh?
A release valve.
Yeah, the release
Valve of the status quo, of the hierarchy.
Yes. It was something like that. And when it stopped, the lower classes, the peasants and the oppressed, and also that are not the guys who were not happy with their lives, they begin to build a massive folk tradition of depicting and inserting these roles of jester, of reversal figures, reversal archetypes, tricksters, archetypes in the folk tradition. And this is okay. That's okay with that. Nothing wrong with that. But René Guénon thought that the forbid when this tradition of Feast of Fool were stopped, this is the first step into the hell. It's the first frame when the fools and jesters are going to take the power, because they did so in a subversive way during the festivals. But when they had opportunity to do that, they seeked the opportunity to do that. And probably when I read Schwankas about the Titellenspiegel, I see how apparent there the modernity, the modern ontology there. That's crazy thing. And also we should probably that where come the clown word in English. It is originated Cologne. Cologne is the clown, so it is the peasants. It's just the people. And of course, this jester figure and the Titellenspiegel addresses to the people, and it is folk culture. The modern times invented a lot of things, but one core thing modern times invented is the political subjectivity of the masses. So we should name Titellenspiegel as kind of archetype for the masses, for the people's wisdom, people's God. Yeah? It's the Saturn in some sense. It's a revival of the Saturn, which was buried by the Basel Council. And it was a revival of this chthonic figure with this, we could call it with hubris. It was a revenge, kind of revenge. And we see the problem, and as the traditionalist with the modernity, we see a problem with the idea of progress, of never-ending progress. So everything, we are just connecting the dots, and we see that evolving this Titellenspiegel or jester figure came out of the cage and made a revolution and killed the king. Literally, they were killing the king every year. But
when it have stopped, I'm sorry for interrupt you. When it have stopped, then the was ended. So it means that it will never end. So it means the day of the fool is now
All the time.
all the time, every day. Every day is a fool's day. Yeah. I think more libidinal, more sexy it will sounds if we will say about a conspiracy of Saturn, conspiracy of Flamens. Yeah. So if we think about modernity, positivistic approach, never-ending progress, and so on, like the evil magic of the Saturn, all fits out, all things appears on their places. Yeah. I'm sorry for my bad, terrible English.
No, don't worry about it. Relax. It's okay. I can really follow you.
And when we faced your text, which is really interesting in the perspective of traditionalists, if we want to bring back the figure of jester and to compose pre-modern state of things, we are really okay with that. But if we want to put the jester back in the modern way, not okay, we have questions about that. So what do you think about our research? What do you think about that?
Fascinating, fascinating. I completely share this diagnosis, yes, the historical trajectory you sketch. And I find myself reciting your exact words. This idea of you must have read Bakhtin and his analysis of Rabelais and the grotesque and the carnivalesque. What struck me immediately once I read that book was this insight you just shared of the reversal between the late medieval stage and our modernist epoch is precisely this, that for us, the fool is already always the king. And where back then you had, in order to preserve the status quo, you had this space where orders could be reversed. But that was, let's say, the state of exception in a Schmittian way. The state of exception has become the permanent state of being, in a sense. And the Joker symbolizes that. The Jester symbolizes that. He is now always on the throne. I completely agree with that, and I find it interesting. So that also means that the kind of subversive power of the Jester, in that sense, has gone completely lost. The Jester can no longer be subversive. He is already the image of the status quo. So in that sense, I can understand your critique of also the nihilistic aspects of the Jester and the insinuation maybe that you would find in the text of this Joker as a kind of subversive figure. I think we're trying to repudiate that. The Joker can no longer be subversive because the Joker is already the ruler. I think for us it emerged more of out of the let's say, the Elizabethan court tradition and the figure of the Joker in that sense as a kind of mediator exactly between the figure of the monarch and the plebs, the people, the populace, right? How does the figure of the Jester illustrate the liminal space of exchange between the upper and the lower classes in a way? And how can you inhabit that space to facilitate a kind of dialogue there, preventing a complete dispersal of interests, perspectives, a complete fragmentation of worlds on that account? I don't think we look upon the Jester as a figure of reversal and as a figure of subversion, but more as a figure of exchange and transition and a meeting of worlds again between the kind of feudal monarch and the rabid populace.
Yeah, understood. And we can continue with that, but I'd like to post some questions on your text. More precise, wrote that currently the world is stuck with art that sees power in simplistic, opportunistic terms. And I should say, before I continue, we really adore the idea of misreading. I think that I didn't understand well your text, but it is okay. Yeah. And when I reread it, I understand that I was not that. It was not clear to me some things, but I like my previous reading of it when I misread it. You know, because if we look upon, for example, the history of philosophy, there are plenty of misreading between the philosopher of different ages and so on. So the misreading is a kind of a guide for us. And so I read this line. I will read this line. Currently, the world is stuck with the art that sees power in simplistic, opportunistic terms, powerful people are inherently evil. And then I misread the line. You wrote resentment, Marxism and slave morality rule, and so forth. And how I read it, yeah, powerful people are inherently evil. Yeah, it is opportunistic and simplistic way of seeing power. But I see that this way of seeing the powerful people are inherently evil is the resentment, or Marxist approach, or even slave mentality or morality, or you would say it is as a kind of simplistic position that tries to escape oppression and power or overthrow it. So I see kind of differently this thing. So I saw that.
Because so do I understand you correctly if you say, well, fine, Stefan, you might write this down, but if you then later start talking about the jester, you're instead proposing exactly that same Marxistic rabbit hole tell Eulenspiegel thing that you say you oppose. Is that your point?
No, not that strict. I just share my ideas. I do not accuse that text in that way. I really try to understand how this culture of the jester.
Then I don't understand what you just I don't understand what you just tried to say. Maybe you should rephrase it, or maybe
I wonder if your misreading was actually a misreading. I felt like what you just proposed was a correct reading of the text.
Maybe. Okay. Then the next thing, let's pass it. We're talking about autonomy of art. If you like, we can share ideas on autonomy of art, because the text says that the demand of autonomy of art is a kind of fake thing. But then you try to... So my question is, if we live as an artist in a liberal world, could we do the same thing as you propose for the jester? Could we execute the function you are trying to propose in that state, in a liberal world? When we, just, for example, when I see the art on the Art Basel, or when I see art exhibiting in liberal institutions and state-funded museums, I don't really see it. I don't really hear what these artists or curators trying to say. I see it as, the agents of sustainability of the liberal hegemony. And they, in a way, they do this mediation between the liberal hegemony and the people. Could you agree with that?
Yes. Maybe I want to try something that could maybe elevate this conversation and bring us closer together in understanding our positions. Shall I try? So you just gave me a beautiful history of the Jester Festival and the development of Tel Eulenspiegel after the festival was abandoned. Yes, I understand. If you leave it to chaos, hell will come, it will be everywhere. But then something else also happened. I think the status quo, or the powers that be, found a very good way to co-opt these chaos and structure it again. And I think that is the world that we are currently living in. And if you read Tel Eulenspiegel, even though you might be right, they should have never abandoned that monthly festival, there are also very beautiful, aesthetic, harmonious elements. It's very loving, those stories. Like, he fools people, they like it when they come into his village. It's very consolidating, everybody has a laugh, they get lifted from their little material positions. A seller of goods gets joked about him just being a seller of goods. He needs to accept that you can also make fun with that. There's a sort of harmonious element to it as well. And I think what you have now is a very hardcore, populist, sort of controlled, negative, nihilist gesture in the political sphere, in the media, in the social media. And what I am hoping to do is to seduce maybe leaders that are now using these very cynical gesture forms to open themselves up to the beautiful, more nuanced, complex possibilities of this same mode, this same mentality. And this also comes from the conviction that you cannot just simply turn it around by becoming a reactionary and say, no, now we should escape hell, we should just exit it. Tell Eulenspiegel is horrible. You should find a way to, with the current situation, seduce people into complexity, into harmony, into structure, into these things as well. And you do that also through the gesture figure. So I would disagree with your characterization of any gesture figure, also Tell Eulenspiegel, categorically.
I could agree with that. It is, it's a good goal, good aim. Yeah, of course, surely. Everybody is suffering, and we should, try to help them to escape or reimagine reality, and I'm okay with that. And the problem is not the problem. The point is where you pin the points, where the ruler is. For example, we should say who is in charge with reality. When you are in the classes, when you are educating as the artist in the art institution, education, you probably could pin that point on your professor who tries to convince you in something. But you may go further and say that there are fundamentals and principles that lies behind the institution and the tradition of art and so on. And you could pin the point there, the fundamentals of it, the tradition of it. And also, it's not the end point. You can go further. The philosophy and the modern times philosophy, why we are doing the things the way we're doing. And that could be a ruler. We can go and pinpoint, even if we are in the art school, we can name the actual president or monarch as this guy who is in charge and try to subvert or mediate the things that comes from this figure, and so on. And also, you may go even further and say that we are, if we speak in a sense of I don't know of how to name it, ontology, speculative realism. The main take of the speculative realism, we don't know anything about the object itself. So we have to be conspiracy theorists to speak about.
No, I don't agree with that. I think as an artist, you don't have to have a holistic conspiracy theory, a matching conspiracy theory about the world. You as an artist should position yourself as an attractive object for a leader who pretends to be a leader, who shows himself as a leader in the world, but also a leader who's maybe a puppet master or somebody behind the scenes. All these figures, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, it's completely okay. We can stay on that level and do not go to the conspiracy theories. And even some philosophers thinks about the Nietzsche. He also was a really nice conspiracy theorist, seeking the will to power as the basis of all the things. So this kind of conspiracy theory, or in a Freudian way, that everything based on libidinal thing and so on. So it's a kind of a conspiracy for me. So let's stay on the level of the actual ruler, for example, president. And if we go to the Curtis Yarvin and listen to what he is trying to say to us, he says that the Trump is not in charge. What he's saying, the Trump is not in charge. But who is in charge? Who we need to address our actions as an artist to this deep state and not apparent figures, or to this, present.
Can I just stop you for a second? Are we aligned when we say so? Okay, I think it's very interesting and great and also tempting for a figure like Curtis Yarvin to say Trump is not in charge, something else is in charge. Let me explain to you what this is. I think Trump is also in charge, and it's very complicated, and it's his position as a court philosopher, a jester, to claim that Trump has zero power and is not good like this and we need a monarchy and all these things. Interesting idea. I think it's the role of the artist. My role is to be able to make artworks without knowing the definitive answer to this question. I think art could be a way of actually figuring out who is in power, since we are in this hellish quagmire where everybody is a jester and at the same time not a jester at all. It is a way of actually veering into that territory, because if everybody's a performer, the only way to get out of that performative dread, in a way, is by accepting the performative element, the fact that everybody is a jester, and then moving towards a position of looking at that with integrity. So it could even be a reflection on a portrait of somebody like Curtis Yarvin to sketch the world as he is doing. Maybe a reflection on his desire to say, Trump is not in power, listen to me. I think art tries to even go above that level. So above the level of conspiracy and of a sort of objective analysis of where power lies. And of course, there's lots of problems with this position, obviously. But that, I think, should be the starting point of this ennobling portraiture venture. Let's figure it out. Let's try to find a way to actually see these things without immediately putting some sort of ideal proposition towards it.
Surely.
Yeah, I wanted to interrupt you again. I'm sorry. It's interesting, this position. Then we say that everyone is a performer and everyone is a jester, everyone is a clown, and Joker is the ruler, actual ruler. And when Curtis says that Trump is not in charge, it's also interesting paradox, because Trump is in charge actually on the normist level, on the status quo level. But this image of Trump, this personality, his identity, is more like a jester. And I think it's interesting because the real jester today, nowadays, is a king, maybe, yeah? Is a real ruler, a real sovereign, or something like that. So we trying to find this king, find this real king, and trying to get him returned back, yeah, like a Lord of the Rings or something like that. But I think your text about noble portrait,
Ennobling portraiture. So it means that anybody who gets portrayed gets the opportunity through the artwork, through being portrayed, to become more like a leader, more like a king, less like a jester in a way.
I think it's interesting text because I just understand it in a way like we are trying to seek this king and trying to seek his image and his personality from chaotic darkness.
Exactly. And I think you should build an art form. That's my task as an artist, that will make this ideal leader possible.